Welcome back, YouTube. I'm your man, Christian the Barbarian, and this is the final part of A Method of Creation in Perfumery by Jean Carles. I'm amazed we've completed this, given my ADHD and my lack of commitment to anything in life. Yet here we are. I'm recording this on my phone, so I'm going to do no editing, like part 1 and 2, which if you've missed, I recommend you go back and listen to those first. And I'm going to try to read this straight through without my commentary, unless we come into more charts like there were in 1 and 2, and then I might briefly explain them. If you haven't already, go to perfumersapprentice.com, download the PDF, and print out a hard copy for your library. That way you've got it. But let's get into it. This was labeled Part 3A, and I was thinking there was a 3B or a 3C, but it turns out this is short enough that we can probably get through this in one shot, and then it'll be just the 3 parts. Here goes nothing. In the previous parts of this paper, I've shown how beginners in the art of perfumery may undertake their apprenticeship in a simple and lively manner, which makes it possible for them to formulate well-balanced, basic accords at an early stage in their studies, and to modify such accords with materials selected according to their own taste and imagination. In the present paper, I intend to consider the problems involved in the search for modifiers and top notes. Of a more fugitive nature than base notes, these are indeed the materials that offer full scope to a perfumer's fancy and make it possible for him to impart to perfume formulations the original, unexpected, and zestful character that will arouse the interest of potential users and eventually direct their choice. It is quite apparent that here again, all conceivable combinations are possible, or almost possible, since in perfumery, as in many other fields, everything is but a matter of discrimination, of selection, and essentially of proportions. Since the study of top notes and of modifiers will lead us to define more accurately the conditions under which floral notes and fast evaporating essential oils or chemicals should be used. We shall not limit our study to a discussion of perfume alone, but shall also consider the broader aspects of the formulation of colognes, which are more commonly and more readily used and possess the advantage of being less expensive. Research into modifiers. It is no easy matter to set forth absolute rules when dealing with a field where freedom of expression and individual preferences are the major factors contributing to the success of creations. This field, however, has certain limitations that are readily defined, easy to comply with, and that merely have to be kept in mind to maintain control over immoderate flights of imagination. Indeed, while modifiers may have a rather noticeable effect on basic accords, they should not modify the main character of the perfume. They should affect the transition between the top notes and the basic accords. Therefore, it should be remembered that they should not exceed 20 to 25% of the total weight of the composition, since an excess could be detrimental to the so carefully established basic accord and would severely interfere with its lasting character. Within the above limitations, the use of such materials is unrestricted by absolute rules. One may employ their currently available materials, such as essential oils or perfumery chemicals, or more elaborate products such as synthetic flower-type perfumes, example jasmine, lilac, lily of the valley, rose, carnation, and the like, or any other type of compound, used singly or in combination. Freedom of choice, freedom of expression. However, while it might both seem difficult and undesirable to direct any research in this field into set channels, a suitable knowledge of the conditions under which the various classes of materials available can be used will greatly help the perfumer's choice. In this connection, we should open a parenthesis with respect to synthetic perfumes. The term synthetic perfume is here intended to refer to a compounded perfume such as rose, jasmine, or musette synth, and not, of course, to a straightforward perfumery synthetic. A given synthetic perfume may, according to circumstances, serve as a modifier or as a base note. The part played by it is dependent on the amount used in the formulation. Indeed, a synthetic perfume is a complete perfume, that is, containing its own top notes, modifiers, and characteristic base notes. Therefore, and it is desired to impart a floral character to perfume, the synthetic lily of the valley, lilac, hyacinth, rose, or other perfumes selected should be used in large amounts in the formulation. On the other hand, when the same products are meant to play a role of modifiers, they should be present in more reduced amounts. The following examples are given for illustrative purposes. This is a very simple suggestion for a formulation wherein the fundamental or basic character of the perfume is provided by lilac and musette synthetic perfumes. Top note is bergamot. This is a listing here. Let me get up and show you real fast. This will focus on there, right? You can see the top note is bergamot, and the modifiers are geranium from Grasse, ylang, aldehyde C12. The base notes, lilac, musette, aldehyde C14, absolute jasmine, musk ambrette. In the next formulation, musette and var, musette 113 are used in the capacity of modifiers, with the top note being bergamot, and the modifiers being absolute rose or synthetic rose, ylang, musette and var, musette 113, and the base notes being alphenol or selvone, acetavenol or vetiveryl acetate, oil, sandalwood extra, absolute jasmine, or musk ambrette. A somewhat special case one should mention here is that rose-type synthetic perfumes, because of the relatively volatile components used in such formulations, they are seldom employed as base notes, but play the role of modifiers in fancy perfumes. It is apparent that any simple notes of suitable character for the desired perfume may be used as modifiers, but a large variety of tones can also be obtained by using synthetic perfumes in combination, as in the following examples. You can see here as well, there's a few examples. And that's followed on the next page there. Either one of these products being used in predominant proportion or both products being used in equal parts. It goes without saying that to such combinations of synthetic perfumes may be added various products selected from the group of modifiers tabulated under the appropriate heading in the table set forth previously, where perfumery raw materials are listed according to their rate of evaporation. Research into headnotes. One will proceed as described with respect to basic accords, with the advantage that the field of investigation is fairly large and that the fancy of each perfumer is given still wider scope, since interesting results are most generally obtained. The very great ease with which raw materials belonging to this class are used is due to the fact that such products possess a fairly generally pleasant note and are practically always mutually compatible. Hence, disastrous combinations are practically impossible. One will merely refer to the table mentioned above, where perfumery materials are tabulated according to evaporation rates to find suitable constituents for an extremely large variety of top notes. It is unnecessary to devote too much effort to the formulation of a top note accord compatible with the modifiers and the basic accord already selected. The responsibility for such liaison work devolves on the modifier components. In this respect, the various tests effected with satisfactorily established formulation show that the modifier components can be changed as desired, while maintaining the original top and basic accords, and that most pleasant results will often be obtained thereby. Examples of such modifications were given in part 1 of the series of articles. For illustrative purposes, some examples of studies for top notes are given in tabular form in the adjacent columns. Yeah, we've got a few more charts here. Get up and show you here. Under combination studied as top notes. You can see that's accords with 2 products. Continued on this page. Accords with 3 products. Accords with 4 products. In some cases, the percentage of head products will be reduced when the modifiers have a sufficiently powerful odor to impart an interesting and pleasant aroma on opening the bottle. Such is fairly often the case when the overall effect of the modifier components is of satisfactorily rising character, as in the following examples. Top note being lavender 40%, modifiers neroli, ylang ylang. Lavender alone will be a suitable top note, and the perfume will exhibit increased lasting properties because of the reduced ratio of highly volatile head products. The few examples set forth above are sufficient to show the extent to which combinations of compounds may be varied, and to make fully understood the great importance of top notes in perfumery. Indeed, the most volatile perfumery materials, such as citrus oils or lavenders, for example, are the first perfume components perceived by the user's olfactory mucosa, and often those components that are responsible for holding the attention of the potential purchaser. The effect produced being all the more favorable as fresh-smelling and relatively evanescent materials are used. Though it's not labeled, I would think this part is what they would have considered 3B, but like I said, we're just going to get through it, get this done. That way we can get on to more interesting things like raw materials. Colognes. Our present topic leads us quite naturally to discuss the formulation of colognes, which predominantly consist of highly volatile top notes. Indeed, conventional colognes are predominantly toilet goods that should have an odor lacking in tenacity, either because said odor should be just sufficient to add the overall pleasant feeling of cleanliness, or because it should not detrimentally affect one's regular perfume. It is understood that modifiers and base notes may be added to cologne formulations for the purpose of imparting more lasting properties to such compositions, but nevertheless, such materials should always be used with moderation in colognes. The main constituents used in the formulation of colognes are set forth in tabular form below, the table being only given for illustrative purposes and as an indication of the work that can be undertaken by any student in perfumery. And this is another chart here. This is a big one too. That's why I recommend you download this. That way you've got it as a reference. I recorded this, so because I would have wanted to listen to this while driving in my work truck or whatever, and not able to read. So that's why I recorded this, even though a lot of this is going to have to be looked at. I'll show it to you here, but I definitely recommend downloading and printing a copy of this out. These are the raw materials for cologne formulations, and it's continued on the next page here. That way, if you're watching this video, you could pause it and screenshot this if you don't have access to a printer, and that way you'll have it on your phone as reference if need be. In spite of the pleasant note of most constituents, it is difficult to create a good cologne, that is, a cologne that will have sales appeal. Again, I beg to be forgiven, but cannot help repeating myself. The personal touch of the perfumer creator will be determining. A perfumer's technical know-how and olfactory memory will serve to produce a well-balanced formulation, but the perfumer's fancy, his sense of humor sometimes, his desire to promote some flash of interest and amusement, and his deep-rooted love for his art will lead him more safely than any so-called recipe to hit on an immediately popular formulation. Popularity being the mark of a good cologne. Types of accord with 2, 3, and 4 products are given. They serve only as an indication and as basis for more elaborate studies. It goes without saying that top notes and modifiers may be included in the accords set forth, and thus increase the already large scope possibilities offered in this field. The last accord set forth leads us to a much more rapid method of research that makes it possible to dispense with the long, tedious search for accords, which, in colognes, seems to be inexhaustible. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, we got a whole bunch more tables here. I'll show it to you. This is the cologne formulation accords with 2 products. We continued on the next page here. That's also a 2 product. This is the 3 product. This is the 4 product. This is the 5 product. Let's see if it's continued on the next page. Nope. My advice is to use the following procedure on the basis of the listed accords. One will choose 4 standard raw materials selected from those printed in italics in the table giving the main constituents for colognes. Formulations comprising the 4 products elected will be established, for example, as follows. The 4 products they selected in this example are bergamot, lemon, sweet orange, neroli, bigarade, petals, or petit grain, grass. and it puts them in ratios of 6:2:2:2, 2:6:2:2, 2:2:6:2, and 2:2:2:6. It is understood that the above ratios of components are given only for illustrative purposes, and these may be modified as desired. These various combinations will form a number of valuable compositions that can be used as a basis for good cologne formulations. To the above accord A, formed from 4 products, will be added another conventional cologne component such as lavender. The formula B, see chart below, being thus obtained. In this manner, one will obtain interesting accords constituting most satisfactory conventional type colognes that could be used as such. I don't know if this was printed in French originally and all of their words translate into 5 and 6 syllable words here in English, but this is a tongue twister. After a given accord is selected with suitable ratios of components, any additional constituents such as verbena may be used, resulting in a new formulation, C. As previously stated, suitable ratios between constituents will be selected for the formulation of the latter accord, and a 7th conventional cologne component, such as geranium african or bourbon, for example, will be added. On the basis of this new formulation, D, one will obtain novel combinations by using varied ratios between components. A number of valuable compositions will result from each of the A, B, C, and D formulations, although no strict rule is involved in the method outlined above. If desired, small amounts of artificial musks, such as musk ketone, musk ambrette, hibiscalide, lactone MC15, and the like, will be added to the compositions. In addition to the conventional type colognes, there are also fancy type, so-called imperial, Russian, royal, amber colognes that are merely conventional colognes modified with additional components, such as those listed below. For a better understanding of the method used, a general scheme is given to show how, starting from formulation D, many modifications of one and the same formula can be obtained. This is another funny chart here, but I'm going to show it to you. And it's broken into 2 pages, which makes it kind of difficult to follow, but you'll get it here. Let's get this out there. So you got A, B, C, and D. And then from D here, it follows on to the next page. See, they broke it up like that. And then from this one, they follow down. Floral notes. Generally, the same rules should be observed in the formulation of floral notes as those previously set forth in relation to Chypre type notes, with some specific modifications. The selection of raw materials providing the characteristic odor of those notes previously discussed was a simple matter, because all belong to the class of slow evaporating base products and make it possible to establish well-balanced basic accords from which all fancy variations are possible. When formulating floral type accords, one has to cope with the fact that the base products one may choose from are sorely lacking in materials exhibiting the characteristic aroma of the flower, such as jasmine, rose, carnation, lilac, tuberose, etc. it is designed to compound. In order to create a floral type accord, one must make simultaneous use of base notes, modifiers, and top notes. In other words, create right away a complete perfume formulation. With jasmine type accords, for example, one should use an association benzyl acetate as top note, with ylang as modifier, and amyl cinnamic aldehyde as base note, or also indolene or benzyl salicylate, which are likewise base notes, to mention only the most important materials necessary for the formulation of a jasmine type perfume. From the following example of jasmine type accord, benzyl acetate, ylang, amyl cinnamic aldehyde, it has them in ratios of 3:3:6, 6:3:3, and 3:6:3. Several interesting, although very simple jasmines can be obtained by varying the ratios between constituents. As previously indicated when discussing Chypre notes, the beginner in the art of perfumery will establish first for each floral note a table where the suitable raw materials will be tabulated according to their rate of evaporation. Only then will he effect experiments with accords containing 2, 3, 4, or more products, as shown in the table on the next page. This is another table here of experimental jasmine accords. You can see it starts on this page and it continues on the next page here. Hopefully you can see that. Hopefully the camera will focus properly on it. And you can see all the different ratios they're in. And these are example accords with 4 products. On olfactory examination of all such accords with 2, 3, 4, 5, or even 6 products, our young students will be pleasantly surprised at the results obtained and will make unexpected findings. Thus, they will achieve quite satisfactory jasmine, rose, carnation, and tuberose type compounds with only 4 or even as few as 3 components. As already indicated, the relative percentage of such components will be varied as desired when formulating such accords. It is impossible, within the scope of the present paper, to consider one after the other all existing floral notes, or even the more common of these. The above jasmines are typically illustrative of the method advocated. The same procedure may be used for the formulation of each floral note. However, before concluding this paper, we shall mention some tricks of the trade using, for example, 2 tuberose accords selected from innumerable studies on this aroma. The 3 ingredients they have are aldehyde C18, argiol, and celery. The C18 is 10% solution, argiol is 10%, and the celery is 1%. And it has them in ratios of 4:6:2 and 2:7:1. It will be found that the above accords constitute an excellent starting skeletal formula for further study of synthetic tuberose. But why use celery in a tuberose formulation? The reason for this is as follows. When effecting olfactory studies on a given note, I always endeavor to discover, in the ultimate stages of the evaporation of the product under investigation, some similarity of odor with a naturally occurring material. Thus I have found out, on evaporation, celery called to mind first tuberose, then orris, etc. Hence, the feeling that this material could be used to reinforce the odor of other raw materials used in perfumery, and the pursuit of research that resulted, for example, in the finding that celery could be used successfully in tuberose formulations, that it reinforced the effect of vetiver with which it blends perfectly. I consider celery one of those most remarkable, long-lasting base products and one of the most valuable perfumery materials. Other floral accords. In the course of my investigations, I made similar findings with many other materials, and such findings resulted in very simple and highly useful formulations. Also, in the course of studies relating to potential associations of raw materials, I obtained identical and most interesting results with pairs of products whose odors were not in the least related to the aroma of specific essential oils. Thus the accord, absolute violet leaves, and petite grain Paraguay in the ratios 1:4 is suggestive of clary sage, while absolute lavender and absolute violet leaves in the ratio 1 part lavender, 2 part violet leaves is suggestive of cucumber. Neroli, bigarade, petals extra, and absolute styrax coloris in a ratio of 2:2 is suggestive of jonquil, and absolute styrax coloris and hydroxycitronellol in the ratio of 2 parts of each suggests a lilac type floral note. Such associations are inexhaustible. These are only a few examples of the fascinating discoveries that can be made in the practice of our art that are so numerous that the entire chapter could be devoted to them. They are vivid proof of how encouraging this type of research may be, although it may appear quite tedious to the uninitiated. And that concludes this. I appreciate y'all sticking with me and listen to this. I hope it's useful. I appreciate my subscribers and all of you that commented, and I'm happy for all of you that found this useful. I recommend you download a paper copy of it. Like I said, that way you can put it in your library and refer to it as necessary, or read it multiple times. Hopefully in the future, we'll get into some of these raw materials and maybe make a few things. That's where the magic is anyhow. So thanks again. Hopefully I'll see you soon.